This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
And every time you're fully present, you say to that person, you are important, you matter, you count. And the most simple and practical way to develop being more present is to listen before you formulate your response.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Brian Biro. Brian is America's breakthrough speaker. He has delivered nearly 1,900 presentations around the world over the last 34 years. He is the author of 16 books, including his bestseller Beyond Success and his brand new book, Lessons from Legends. Brian was rated #1 from over 40 speakers at 4 consecutive Inc. magazine international conferences with degrees from Stanford University and UCLA. Brian has appeared on Good Morning America and CNN. Brian was recently honored as one of the top 10 interactive keynote speakers in North America. And get this, one of the top 50 motivational speakers in the world. And I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his unique perspective and experiences. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, John. I'm excited just from our pre-game talk. I know we're going to have a great time.
Yes, absolutely. I'm honored to have you on the show. And again, I'm excited to hear from you. You've done a lot of speaking. You've met a lot of leaders. You motivate a lot of people. So get us started. So what I introduced you as America's breakthrough speaker. What is that?
Well, John, breakthroughs are the best things in life. When we break through from fear to freedom, we break through from ego to ego, we break through from silos to synergy. And I've had 3 really neat careers. My first career was a U.S. swimming coach. So I was working with athletes to break through those obstacles and mental limits that they can put on themselves. Then my corporate career ended up being a vice president of 2 large corporations where we're trying to break through an unstoppable culture. And for 34 years as a professional speaker and an author. So breakthrough has been my passion, understanding how can we make breakthroughs not only possible, but actually plannable. And that's really been my work over the last 48 years through those 3 careers. And really, it's come down to a kind of a simple understanding of what I call breakthrough leadership. So that's kind of the basis of why I'm called America's Breakthrough Speaker, because my focus is to help others break through.
I absolutely love that. Now, this seems to be your passion. You've written 16 books, and my hat's off to you because I haven't only written 3. I know the effort that it takes, so my hat's off to you. You've traveled around the world. You're speaking, you're teaching, you're talking about team building, leadership, coaching, life balance, this idea of breakthrough. What in your background prepared you or motivated you to do this really important work?
Well, I think it all starts with the foundation of that I love people. I believe that we have breakthroughs inside of us, that we have the possibility of doing well. And I've been a very voracious reader of biographies of people through my life. And the one ingredient that I've seen in the best leaders, whether they're in business, politics, teaching, coaching, is they're realistically optimistic with an accent on the optimistic. And that means that we believe we can change, we can get better. And so my whole life, I realized that we're all in the people business. How far you go depends upon how much you grow and help others grow. And so really, that's really been the focus most of all, is that this foundational belief. I saw it as a swimming coach. I'd take some athletes who really didn't believe in themselves. And really, it wasn't so much about stroke technique. It was about their minds and their hearts breaking through those fears and obstacles. Ultimately, we break through one thing, break from fear to love and faith. And that's it. And every breakthrough breaks down into that. So it's been my focus, my passion, my joy to help people break through.
I got to unpack some things here. First of all, I love the idea of realistic optimism, and I do coach C-suite people. I've got 3 coaching clients right now, And we were just talking about optimism today, is like one of the key things you have to have as a leader is a high level of optimism. Why do you think that is? Because I do believe it. It's been part of my experience as 30 years and now CEO of my own company. I believe that optimism is contagious. And yes, we have to be realist. We have to understand where our business is at and where the challenges are. But also our mood affects the people around us. So tell us a little bit more about optimism, why that's so important in your opinion.
Well, I think it comes down to what I call the Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect is been around in psychology forever, and every great leader must be a positive Pygmalion. The Pygmalion effect means that our thoughts and our beliefs and our expectations are magnetic. Just as you said, it's contagious. That as we think about others, we're actually pulling them in the direction of the way we think about them. So the reason why it's so crucial to have that level of optimism is the world is changing, business is changing. If I think about my speaking today compared to 5 years ago, I have to do things in 45 minutes that I used to do in 4 hours. And if you don't believe in the possibility of change, if you don't believe that we can get better each and every day, all right, then you're going to be going backwards. And so that optimism absolutely is the core of every great leader, every great parent. Yeah, a great place to look at it is look in terms of your own children. You want them to go to the highest level, and you believe that they can, because what you focus on is what you create. All right. And that's really the key thing. If you focus on what you don't want, you get what you don't want. You focus on what you do want, you begin to move in that direction, because vision becomes reality.
So this is an interesting question. So related to breakthrough. I'm naturally optimistic. I have been for most of my life. So it's natural for me to be optimistic. We may have leaders and listeners on the show that might say, you know what? I don't believe in this Pollyanna stuff. I'm a realist. I have to face reality. How can we help those leaders think about how to break through into more of an optimistic mindset? What do you think holds people back? You mentioned fear. This is interesting to me. Fear is part of our challenge. A lot of times, I saw this in 22 years in corporate. I saw fear-based decisions being the biggest problem with poor leaders. Is they feared being exposed. They feared not having the right answer. They feared losing their jobs, and fear was a big issue. So tell us a little bit about how do we break into, if we're negative or we're at least a realist, how do we break through into an optimistic mindset?
Well, I think it comes down to number one, all right, letting go of comparison. Comparison really holds you back as a leader. And the shift is to focus on controlling three controllables. That's really what the basis of what I call breakthrough leadership. My mentor, one of the people I wrote about in this newest book, Lessons from the Legend, and actually my first book, Beyond Success, was the greatest men's college basketball coach of all time. His name was John Wooden. Anybody doesn't know who's watching your show, John Wooden won 10 national championships at UCLA. No other coach in men's history has won more than 5. But Coach Wooden was absolutely, positively an even better leader, person, teacher than he was a coach. Right? And his focus was on controlling your controllables. In 27 years at UCLA, the greatest coach of all time never said the words winning or losing to his players. Now, did he want to win? Oh, yeah. But what he wanted more was for everyone that was a part of UCLA basketball to focus on a definition of success that led to focusing on your controllables. Success is peace of mind. It comes from knowing you've given the best of what you're capable. So all leaders want results, but great leaders focus on what you put in to get to the results rather than the results out themselves. You've got to focus on shaping your future. All right. And that's about vision. Every great leader's got to start with vision. And there's 2 aspects to that. Go into that in a minute. Second is about energy. If you listen to any great athlete, they'll often talk about the difference in their performance was one of energy, not talent. Talent is there. And the highest levels, there's a lot of talent, but it's that energy that you put into your preparation, energy you put into your performance. And finally is to build people, build teams, and build relationships. Again, every business is a people business. All right. And so those 3 controllables, how you shape your future, how you build energy, energize and engage your team, and how you build people, teams, and relationships is how you can shift to that optimism. Because if you think about it, when we're focusing on the things we do control, that's when we feel momentum. That's when we feel confidence. That's when we feel optimistic. It's when we try to control things we don't control that we start to create that fear.
It's really, this is powerful that you say that, and I can give you a real world example of it. When I first took over my first manufacturing plant, I was 32 years old, and I didn't know how to run a manufacturing plant, but I knew people and I love people. So I spent a lot of time on the manufacturing shop floor, built relationships, learned where the challenges were, fixed the things that I knew that need to be fixed. But I was very present leader, and the results of the business over time just went through the roof, right? And a lot of my peers said, "What are you doing to get the numbers you're getting?" And I could not explain it. And I had trouble. And it's taken me till now, the last 10 years, where I become an author and I've written about the stuff, that I realized it was all I was doing was building relationships and getting to know my people and understanding what their challenges were, and really getting to know them, being present. And it was like I controlled the things that I could control, and the numbers came out much better. And so they wanted to know the secret sauce. And I'm like, there is no secret sauce. It's really about people. So I love that you say that.
It really is. I'll give you another story that fits that exact same thing. In my corporate career, my company was in a bad shape, and everybody said it's the market, because we were heavily involved in transportation regarding the oil industry. And at that time, the price of oil had plummeted, so construction had stopped. So and everybody's saying, well, it's the market. We have to wait for the market to rebound. I said, it's not the market, it's us. We don't support. Operations hate sales. Sales hates operations. They both hate the home office just a little bit more. And so I had a CEO. I was vice president of marketing and sales. And I went to the CEO, who was a very optimistic guy, and said, I really believe that we can do new things if we start to support each other. So that's actually a career start. I started doing team building in my own company. And the transformation on the bottom line was astonishing. I mean, we had one of the greatest turnarounds in the transportation industry, but we weren't focused on the numbers. We were focused on building those relationships. By the time we finished that series of team building, never was there an operations meeting without people from sales and marketing, and vice versa. And we started rocking. We did things that were always there, but we never saw them because we were so busy, folk kind of closed up in our own silos. So you nailed it. The secret sauce is building people, teams, and relationships.
I love that. I love that. And, it's funny, you touched on something. I just talked to one of my CEO leaders that I'm working with, is the idea of the enemy is outside the four walls. It's something I've always preached. In fact, my second book is called All in the Same Boat. That's the message, right? Is that the enemy, when I was a submarine officer, the enemy was outside the hull. It was the ocean pressure that wanted to crush us and send us to the bottom of the ocean. And if we didn't work together, that could happen, right? So when I got to business, it was easy for me to say the enemy is outside the four walls. It's not inside the four walls. It's not marketing. It's not sales. It's not QA. It's not production. We are all in it together. The people outside these four walls want us to fail, right? And the only people that want us to succeed are the people inside these four walls. And that's a different mindset for leaders.
It's a beautiful mindset. When I was a swimming coach, I had a great run as a swimming coach. My team became one of the largest teams in America. People always said swimming is an individual sport. They could not be farther from the truth, because when we worked together the way we could in practice, it was almost as if we had a current pushing us faster. And when we started to move, instead of we go to ego, it was this: we had to turn and swim into that. So we all rose together. It was amazing. When we were flowing, it was as if everyone was creating this magical forward momentum together. The same thing happens in an organization. That's what a culture is really most about. An unstoppable culture comes from we go, not ego.
I love that. I love that. Culture is a big thing. I love that you mention it, because I think it's one of the things that leaders are ultimately responsible for, is creating, maintaining the culture that they have within the organization. So when there is activity that is counter to the culture that you want to have in the organization, you have to put a stop to it quickly, right? Because that's contagious, And so the idea that culture is sort of natural, it just happens. Yes, but the leader has to make that happen. The leader has to be, and I imagine, in your book, you talk about that with Coach Wooten, because he created winning cultures, right?
He really did. He created a culture where, first of all, he believed that the big breakthrough from being good to great really came down to the difference between two words. When you're average or good, you're willing to support each other in the greater good of the team. But when you break through to being great, That's when you're absolutely eager. It's the difference between being willing and being eager. When you're eager, no job is too big, no job is too small. And so breaking through and representing that each day by focusing in on making what you did with your organization, where you were on the floor, talking to people, building people, you were setting up a culture that said, we're in this together. Because you weren't just sitting up in your office, just talking to your three vice presidents. You were down there on the floor making it happen. That is where culture begins. If you don't live it, it's not going to happen.
Yes, absolutely. Powerful, powerful words for sure. So one of the things you say is that we're all leaders. Now, most of us have been raised with this idea that there are very few leaders and there's lots of followers, chiefs and Indians, right? The idea, but you say it's different. We're all leaders in some respect. What's your perspective on this?
Well, I think that it's really a vitally important key for people to understand that you are a self-leader. You are the CEO of your own life. And what I mean by that is, how do you show up every day? That's leadership. You're constantly teaching the people around you a way to deal with adversity, to deal with prosperity, to deal with routine by how you show up. How do you deal with adversity? That's another key. Most of all, what kind of impact do you have on the people around you? Do you lift them up by when you walk in the door and they have a sense that things are going to be better, or do you push them down? So we're all leaders, and that's the foundation of what every CEO wants everybody to be accountable and responsible. That means that they got to be self-leaders. They understand that they are the CEOs of their own life. And when you feel that way, then you take ownership of your part of that team. If you don't feel like that, if you don't feel like you're a leader, then it's just a job. And that's really a vital, important key. So I've loved the fact that I've spoken to about 1 million people over the last 34 years. And that's part of the message at every single one of my events, to make sure that every person there knows that they are a leader, because they can take steps to shape their future, to energize and engage themselves and the people around them. Because before you can energize anybody else, who must you energize and engage? Yourself. Right. And finally, that we are all in the business of building people, building teams, and building relationships. Those are the same whether you're a CEO or you're the newest team member in your organization. So when people feel that way, they start to feel like they are accountable. They love taking personal responsibility for their contribution to the team. They feel important. That's the job of a CEO. That's a job of a leader. That's a job of a parent. Our job is to help the people that we lead, that we serve, that we love, to know they're important. Because when people feel they're important, they rise to an oh yeah spirit. And when people feel unimportant, they fall away to an oh no spirit.
You said something that's really important there. I always say that people want to feel like they belong, and they want to feel like they're doing valuable work. And I think sometimes we as leaders don't recognize that. We see, like, I run manufacturing plants, so I have people that weld parts and paint plant parts, and they and they grind parts. And so we might take and think that that's not important to our role. And so we have to recognize that these are real people. And one of the things that I found in my first plant was I connected, when I talked to people and asked them what they did, they would always tell me the function they did. Like, I put these parts together, I plate these parts. They would tell me what they did. And I would say, well, what does it do? Like, what do you do? And so I was trying to get them to get to the point where we were making circuit breakers at this factory. And eventually I got to the point where I said, you know what, they need to know the bigger picture for what they're doing. And we started talking about it. And so we taught them the idea that what they were doing was helping keep the lights on. So you're powering hospitals, you're powering schools, you're powering the supermarket that you go shop at. Your work keeps the lights on for society. And it was just like sort of turning them on to that. And every time we had a big project, I would tell them, like, we're doing an airport in Saudi Arabia. Your breakers are going into that airport. You're powering the lights at an airport runway. And it was almost like there was a sense of pride in what they were doing again. It wasn't just like, oh, got the same job I got to do every day, but I was helping them see that their work made a difference. And people want to belong, and they want to know that their work makes a difference. Does that make sense?
That is brilliant. I loved Coach Wooden's metaphor for what a team is, a basketball team, but it would apply to any kind of team. He said, it's like a car. All right, you may have a superstar. We just lost Bill Walton this past week, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Maybe they were the engine because they were that great. But guess what? That engine does nothing without wheels, right? And guess what? Those wheels will fall off if you don't have lug nuts. And so maybe the 14th man on a 14-man roster of basketball never even gets into a game at UCLA, but because they have such an important role, even though it may seem small at first, by letting them know that they felt that sense of pride of, I'm a part of this because I push that engine every day in practice. I may never get in a game, but I work really hard in practice, and without that, they would not be as good as they can be. And so when you build that into each person, that they're important, that they matter, that they're significant, that they're part of something bigger, then we're all working it together, and it would not be the same without their part of it. Then you get people to really feel a sense of pride, a sense of belonging, a sense of value.
I love that. I love that. One of the things I say is that every sailor on a submarine is important to the mission. So we would take our most junior sailor, and they had one function that they would do, which is smash trash. We'd compact the trash and we shoot it out the bottom of the submarine. Now, this is not oil or any plastics, but all the stuff is biodegradable. We shoot out of the bottom of the plant or out of the bottom of the submarine. And who do we give that job to? The most junior sailor. So the most junior sailor, we give responsibility to put a hole in the bottom of the submarine. Right. And we trust them and we teach them. Right. So they're absolutely vital to that mission. Do you think the cook in the galley is not important to the mission? If we can't eat, right, if we don't have the fuel that we need to be able to do our job, carry out our mission, get home, then we're fail. Every sailor was critical to our mission. And I always taken that approach, the mindset that every one of our employees is critically important to the mission of our business. Otherwise, you wouldn't have them. Right.
That's absolutely right. And to get people centered around a common vision, each person's part of that vision may be unique. At that cook versus that junior submarine sailor, and you never know when you're going to step up to the plate to be the most important person in that moment. I had a young swimmer who I coached for 8 years, never made the Junior Olympics. One time she finally made it exactly the time standard. And then she went out in the Junior Olympics, the slowest of the 64 qualifiers, won the silver medal, improved 12 seconds in a 100-meter race. And she was the reason she ignited our whole team. She thought by looking at them, because every time we look at the people around us, part of us says, guess what? They're part of my team. If they do well, then I can do well, and vice versa. I'm known for having people break wooden boards in my event.
Yeah.
Million people break boards. And I always teach this principle. It's vital in every organization. The whole team breaks through every single board. And that means you're cheering, your support, your unstoppable, just totally full out support for each other. Sometimes is the difference between somebody even stepping forward and going for it, or as opposed to staying on the sidelines. And as Gretzky, the great one from hockey, said, I missed 100% of the shots I never took. Well, when the whole team breaks through every single board, you realize that everyone around you is important to you and you are important to them. And that's when you start to create that magnificent momentum.
I love that. I love it. Absolutely love it. Let's go back a little bit. You mentioned the term breakthrough leadership. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us? Because I think that's an essential thing. And we kind of went through it pretty quick. What do you mean by the term breakthrough leadership?
That's where it gets into that concept of 3 foundational controllables to focus on as a leader. I believe in the KISS principle, keep it simple, superstar. If you will focus on these 3 elements you put into being a leader each day, you're going to create breakthrough results. The first is to shape your future. And there's 2 aspects of that. That's about vision. The first part is to understand that what you focus on is what you create. So it goes back to what we started our conversation with. Focus more on what you want to create. When it comes to example, a metaphor, the most important ingredient in breaking through that 1-inch thick board is to look beyond the board. If you look at the board, you get the board. You look beyond the board, you get the breakthrough. The second key to breakthrough vision, to shaping your future, is to not use your memory alone to see. I've asked my programs, close to 1 million people this question: what color is a yield sign? So everybody's asking, immediately answer. And 95% of people say yellow. Well, yield signs are red and white. They're upside down triangles. And the question is, why don't we see them? The reason is we use our memory to see. When you change the way you look at people, the people you look at change. Change the way you see yourself, the self you see will change. So step 1 is shape your future, and it's those 2 aspects of vision. The second step in breakthrough leadership is to energize and engage your team. When it comes to human performance, when it comes to really overcoming obstacles, so much of it is energy. But most people think their energy is kind of like the weather. It's kind of like, hope the weather's good for the family picnic. But our energy is a choice. It's a choice based upon two foundational keys. Number one, the way you move. Whenever you've been at your best, you've given your best presentation, you've been your most creative, you moved your body differently than when you've not been your best. All right. So change the way if you want to move your business, you want to move your leadership, you got to move yourself. The second and even more powerful key to energy is purpose. Whenever you're full of purpose, you're full of energy. When you get to do what you love to do, when you get to do your show, John, it doesn't matter what else is going on because you love it, right? And you is there for that show. Now, when I'm on stage, I am 25 years old. When I get off stage, I'm almost 70. But on stage, I am, and that energy just flows out because I'm doing what I love to do. So movement comes with purpose. So the foundational key to purpose is to ask yourself, what am I truly grateful about? That'll focus you on your priorities. Your priorities will lead to your purpose. One of the great books of all time was called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a book by Viktor Frankl, who endured the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And he said, those that endured, those that made it through, were those that had a purpose left undone. And so if you're not inspired, then you're expired. So purpose is the core of energy. So the second key is to energize and engage your team, which starts by energizing and engage yourself. The third is to build people, teams, and relationships. Come back to that sense that whatever business you're in, manufacturing, high tech, whatever it is, it's a people business. Ultimately, it's about the people on your team and somebody that you're serving. And when you understand that, you realize, as you did kind of just almost naturally from your time in the Navy, right, and then in your time in building manufacturing, that it was about the people on the floor. It was getting them to love what they do, to support one another, to make sure there weren't silos, to really appreciate them and recognize them, and they would soar to a high level. So how do you do that? You build people, teams, and relationships through authentic recognition, acknowledgement, appreciation, and most of all, by being present.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, that's great. It's fantastic. And listeners to the show all know from my first book, I say this over and over again, that leadership is a people business. You're saying it over and over again, which cracks me up. So my listeners are going, yes, this guy gets it. And I love it because we see it, we see the world in very, very much the same way. And again, I've done 30 years in the trenches. So these things work. Listeners, are you saying, does it make sense? Is what I'm hearing just something that people say to write books? Is Brian and John lying to me? We know we're not. This works. This I've got 30 years of practice that tells you this stuff works. So I absolutely love this, Brian. It's fantastic. So the new book is called Lessons from the Legends. Now you put together these championship team building formulas. They come from Pat Summitt, John Wooten, who we've been talking about. Like, again, these are championship coaches. Tell us what inspired. I mean, you've written 16 books, right? So why this book now? What inspired you to write this book at this time?
Well, to me, John, right now, more than any time in my lifetime, and I'm going to be 70 this year, I believe that we got to move from ego to we go. These two coaches were incredibly different in style. Pat Summitt was in many ways to women's basketball what John Wooden was to men's basketball. Gino Auriemma at UConn may have a question about that, but he had an immense amount of respect for Pat Summitt. Pat Summitt was intense. She could melt steel with her glare. John Wooden was very gentlemanly and seemingly very mild mannered. He got his point across. So they had different styles, but fundamentally, they represent the things that I think can turn our country into into the way it really can be. They represent what leaders really are about. First, they were humble. So many people think that humility, and I've seen this more in the last 7-8 years, people think somehow humility is a weakness. No, because they think, well, if you're humble, you can't be confident. You can be very confident, very humble, because being humble doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. Right? But here's the key to humility, and they both represented it. Only those who are humble are lifelong learners. Only those who are humble are always looking to find a way to improve, to get better. They don't think they're already there. That's a message that I think a great leader we must recapture that, because we have too much of, if I'm the leader, I have to be right. No, right? You have to learn. That's what really makes the difference. They both really taught foundational keys to being a great human being, even more than being a great basketball player. The basketball stuff was the easy part. It was about really building a foundation. So they each had models that they built into every practice, into every game, into every day. John Wooden's was called the Pyramid of Success. Pat Summitt's, all right, was her definite dozen. But they were foundational keys about being a hard worker, about losing with dignity, and representing that when you lose, you have a chance to learn, right? And that losing isn't necessarily about the scoreboard. Losing is about understanding what you can do to get better and using it as a foundation to improve all the time. So I wanted to write about a man and a woman who were great coaches, two people with different styles, but ultimately whose principles, core principles of integrity, of humility, of team first, of really balance, that really could make a difference in our young people and our leaders, and every human being. So, they both were pretty phenomenal human beings. I was friends with John Wooden, so it was one of the great gifts of my life. I never had the privilege of meeting Pat Summitt, but learning about her to write this book was phenomenal. And I got to know her son, who's a great guy. And I really, really appreciated the opportunity to put both of these together, to understand that we can have different styles, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. But if we come from a foundation of ego versus ego, we can change our businesses, we can change our culture, we can change our world.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Now, who should read this book? Who is it written for?
Well, it's written for, remember, I said everybody's a leader, so it's written for pretty much everybody. Great value for definitely in the business world. So I would highly recommend it to your listeners who are going to have people that are leaders, managers, VPs. But I also think it has an awful lot to do with family. So I really believe it's for everyone, men, women. It's a book about core principles that we can all decide to move towards. Ultimately, I realized that everything I teach is about choices. And these two represented the kinds of choices that just build respect. They understand that you don't demand loyalty, you build loyalty by being loyal.
I love that. And again, listeners, this is how we become better leaders, is we read the stories of the people who have gone before us. And who better than these two legends of the game, right? To learn from them, learn what they did, learn how they became successful, and again, how they managed and how they dealt with the people side of it. Fantastic. I'm so excited that you've written this book. Such a fantastic book, such a great idea for a book as well, to get these lessons out there for people. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
Well, I think the most important thing that I teach, John, is the foundation of helping people know they're important comes down to one simple thing. And it's what you did on your floor in your manufacturing company, is being fully present. Mm-hmm. When you're fully present, you say to people beyond words, unshakably, unfakeably, you are important. Being fully present means 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with the person you're with where they are now. And when you're fully present, it's more difficult today because we're on our cell phones all the time. But when you're with people, they know instantly if you're fully there. And they know instantly if you're not fully there, if your mind's somewhere else. And every time you're fully present, you say to that person, you are important, you matter, you count. And the most simple and practical way to develop being more present is to listen before you formulate your response. Most of the time we're thinking about what we're going to say. But if we just take it in first, we'll still be able to respond. But by doing that, we're filling them with a sense that they have value, that you respect them, that what they have to say has some importance. So there's nothing you can do that's more important than being fully present for the people in your life. The past is history, the future a mystery, the gift is now. That's why we call it the present.
I cannot add any more to that comment, Brian. That is fantastic. And leaders, listen to those words, right? Rewind it. Just play that back again. And you want to know if you want to go from an ordinary leader to an extraordinary leader, just listen to that over and over again. That's exactly what you need to do. Brian, that's fantastic. I really appreciate those words. They're inspirational. They're inspiring me. I'm fired up. I want to go to work right now and go fire up my team. That's fantastic. I love it. Be present. And hey, if you haven't heard me say that before, you've just heard Brian say that. It's something I truly believe in. I think it's fantastic. Brian, how can our listeners find out more about you and all these books you've written, especially the latest book?
Well, you can get the book wherever you buy books, so that's easy. And my website is where I get book from speaking for speaking. It's just www.brianbiro.com. It's BrianBiro, and I love people. I'm out here in Arizona today to be able to speak to a really neat company, and that's what I do. It's what I was put on earth to do. So I love you if you visit my website and say hello, and I will always respond back.
Fantastic. And we're going to put links in the show notes for all of Brian's resources. Hey, guys, listen up. Get that book. Listen. If you want to become a better leader, learn the lessons from the people who have gone before you, especially these two legends. Get the book, pick it up. And again, I encourage you to read at least one book a month as a leader. You read 12 books a year. You can read 120 books in a 10-year career. Do it. Read a book. This is a great book, great example. And again, Brian is someone that has got the right message for you to become a really effective leader. Brian, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for bringing your energy, bringing your passion, and all of this information to our audience, because I know we're all better because of it. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you, John. You're doing a great job. I really, as I said, we probably could talk for another 2 hours, but I guess we got to get on with whatever we got to get on with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll stay connected though. So thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.